What is Figma? Basically, Figma is a canvas tool where you can create layouts, graphs, flowcharts, pre visualizations, and pre renders. And what's nice about Figma, rather than using some tool like I don't know Photoshop, where you can maybe make the same kind of images. Figma works all in the cloud, so what's nice about Figma is that you can have a working prototype uh, file that you can share with people, with clients or collaborators. And if you need to make a change, you can make an edits in real time. They can leave comments that are location specific. And it's a nice way to collaborate virtually in real time. Um, Another big advantage of Figma, like I just said, real-time collaboration. You can export things, obviously, but with the way that Figma works, there's really not any need to. So what is Figma actually used for? As I said earlier, you can do stuff like create flowcharts, create diagrams, you know, brain paths, content bibles. You can create and working prototypes for things like mobile apps or websites as well. And what I mean by working prototypes is beyond just placing the images on the screen of the plus button or where all these plants are. Um, Figma has pretty deep functionality in that you can actually program these as buttons. So if you send this file to a client, they can actually click through here as if it was a real website, a real functioning website. Um, of course, it would be limited to what you program, but it's very handy for that. And when I say program, I don't mean you open up code and you have to actually code part of a website. There's very little to no coding, and you're just connecting kind of wires to each other in a very logical, visual way. So if y'all have your computers out, which it looks like a lot of y'all do, and you don't have a Figma account, I'm going to go through a tiny little mini tutorial here. So go to Figma, and it might prompt you to sign up and start an account. But another nice thing about Figma is that there's an app, but there's also a web app, so you don't need to download anything. I tend to, when I'm using apps like Figma, just use the web app because I don't know if I need another application taking up space on my computer. So go to Figma, sign up. I'll give you a second, and then you should be able to click this is a laser pointer. You should be able to click the plus button in the top left corner after you do that, and sign up. And if you don't have your laptop or anything, I'll play a bunch of videos so you can just watch along as well. So as y'all do that, I'm going to explain the basic UI of Figma. So there is a few main sections. There's a menu section. There's a tools bar right here. You'll see kind of the title of what you're working on with a drop down in the middle. On the left, it'll be blank for a new file, but this is where the layers are. You can think of layers like Photoshop layers or any kind of image editing app. The canvas is in the middle. That's where you're going to be seeing a visual representation of what you're working on. And then the inspector panel on the right, which will give you all the details of whatever you've clicked on. So in the menu here, you click on that, and that will give you options to, like, if you want to create a new rectangle, a new shape, you want to create a button or something. That's where you're going to find all the tools that you need to use. The layers here is, like I said earlier, where all the layers will show up. So once you add more and more, you can place things over top of each other. and then the canvas is where you make all your work. And then I talked about these, and then I'll get into all of these as we do like this little demo. So I see a few people are in Figma. In the top left of the screen, the opening screen, there should be a little plus button or maybe a new file, depending on what browser you're on. But you click that and you should see a screen very similar to this. So we're going to get started to create a tiny little functionality or just play around with the basic tools at first. So the first thing we're going to do is create a frame. And a frame is a container that you will put other elements in. If you've used Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, it's the same as an artboard. It's essentially, if you're thinking about it physically, before there were website builders like this, it's like completely different pieces of paper that you're working on that shouldn't touch each other. There's a few different ways to create a frame. I think this should play nice. The top left in the tools panel, you'll see this grid thing. You can click on that. It'll get you the grid tool, and you can just draw a frame. As you see here, you can also click on different kinds of frames to, I'll play that again. There's options, like pre-made options on the right here, where if you know that you're creating a UX, a pre-visualization for an iPhone, you'll click that and it just automatically makes you the size of an iPhone 8, which I think is really handy. So I'm going to start by making an iPhone 8 frame. So you've done that. And now I'm going to talk about navigating around through the canvas. There's a zoom button in the top right that you can use. There's hotkeys like plus and minus to zoom in and out. I usually work with a mouse, so I'm using the scroll wheel. Another handy one is zoom to fit. That'll just automatically put everything you've worked on in the canvas. Those are pretty standard, across a lot of different apps. You just have to know where to find it. So it's in the top right corner there. The hand tool, H, is how you, grab onto the canvas and move left and right. You're going to be doing that a lot because, the more you add onto this canvas, the more you're going to have to navigate around. If I'm on the Mac and I'm on my trackpad, I'll use 2 fingers to navigate around. So now that we made this iPhone 8 frame, I'm going to put some text on it by going up to that tool panel again and clicking the tool button, and then you just click on your panel and start typing. And once you do that, you'll notice that a bunch of details about the text will show up here in that information panel. So we'll take a look at that in a second, I think. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm making an imaginary sign-in button if I were to make an iPhone app or something with a sign-in tool. So I'm going to press R here to create a rectangle. You could also just go up to that tools panel again and click the rectangle. You click on the rectangle tool, I have that selected, and then you just drag from one corner to the other to create a rectangle, and it's that easy. So what we just did is as you can see here in the layers panel, we just created a rectangle over our text, and obviously we're going to want to see our text. So how do we put the sign in over the text? There's a lot of different ways to do that. I personally think probably the easiest way is just to go over to the layers and drag that above. That's the most visual way to do it for me. But there's also arrange commands. There's hotkeys. You can right click to bring up options. This is so if you click on it there in the layers and right click, there's options to bring to front. Here, I'll slow that down so that you can see all those options. So, you right click, you can see you can bring to the front, which brings it to the very top of the layer stack, send it back. And then there's other options here that are not relevant to us right now, but are important to read about, like group selection, like selecting a whole group of things. Flatten will get rid of the layers and merge everything together. And then a few other things. Components are kind of start to get more advanced if you want to group things into functionality, like we're going to want to make this a button later. And then some transform things like flip horizontal, flip vertical, and copy. So we want to center this thing. So what we're going to do is, again, click on it. Or actually, we're going to drag over both things, and it'll bring up that details panel again. And once we do that, you can see there on the right these little shapes. And if you ever use Photoshop or something similar, these shapes are kind of standardized across a lot of apps. This is basically different ways to arrange things. So you can justify things to the left, center things, justify things to the right. And then this is like a top center, middle center, bottom center. This is spreading things out equally horizontally, and this is spreading things out equally vertically. So this is an important part of doing UX design, is not manually going through and moving things pixel by pixel and arranging things in such a way that it looks good. There's tons of tools there where you can select 5 things at a time and just click a button, and it will automatically arrange things equally in a very nice way. So here's another piece of functionality for this rectangle. We're going to turn it into kind of more of a softened rectangle with a corner radius. So I clicked here on the rectangle. I'm sorry, these go by kind of fast. But I clicked there on the rectangle, and again, in that options panel, we're going to look at just curving these edges in a little bit. And you can see those right there with a nice little rounded edge shape that might be kind of hard to see on the screen. But these are all the transform properties. X and Y position, width and height of the rectangle, angle of like the location, and then the curve of the corners. These are good if you know that you want to do some specific sizes and to check to see maybe you want to make sure all of your rectangles are the same size or something. I don't think I talk about this in this little tutorial here, but I just want to touch on these constraints. An important part of UX design, especially when it comes to things like making mobile apps or websites, is the idea of constraints. And basically what that means is, so to back up a little bit, with web programming and mobile apps, part of the challenge that designers have to take into consideration are the variance in screen sizes. No screen is going to be the same. You have a lot of people with different kinds of phones, even sideways phones, things like, you can resize browser windows, and you're going to want to make sure that your website looks good no matter what size screen you're working on. You're never going to know what size screen your user is going to be looking at. So even though we chose iPhone 8 here, there's a lot of different factors that can come into play that might change the screen size. So when you're designing UI, just a little bit of UI UX theory, you want to constrain all of your elements so that when the browser resizes, it knows where to put these elements. So in this example, it is constrained to the left and the right, or the left and the top. You can see that by these visualization of these blue lines here. And what that means is if we drag and make this frame bigger to the right, this is going to stay still. But if we make the frame bigger to the left, it's going to stick to the left, and it's going to stick to the top. So things like for example, if we get a little meta here and look at the website of Figma itself, this toolbar is always going to be stuck to the top. You know, this layers panel is always going to be stuck to the left, no matter how you resize. All this is going to be stuck to the right. So when you're designing, you know, if I want this sign-in button here, just think about where you want it to be stuck if the browser is, resized in some way. So moving on, we're going to look at some more, just another simple thing here. Change the font. You click on that text. Again, all the information. I pause it. All the information you need when you click on the text shows up here on the right in these options, these properties. And so the text font right here, Roboto is just like a default font for a lot of Mac applications, I think. But that's where you change all of your text options. Let me see what else I did in this video. You know, you can change your text weight, like bolds. There's some other options here, like all caps, small caps. I made it all caps here. Since I made it all caps, it actually kind of changed how everything was aligned. So I selected everything again and made sure it was all center aligned. So those are just like the really basics of just creating text and shapes and making sure things are aligned in Figma. But before I hop into, I'm just going to open up Figma as well and just play around with it for a bit. I wanted to give some tips here. When you're opening Figma for the first time, you know, if you're just playing with it and you're just learning, that's good. But if you have an idea in mind of what you're using this app for, I highly recommend you. There's no reason to start from scratch. For example, if you're creating a mobile app and you know you're going to have a sign-in screen, Figma, the website, has a lot of templates for all kinds of uses. There's nothing wrong with using pre-made things that people have built for you. That's just how UX development functions. Everything is cumulative. So I'm sure when you all saw when you logged on to Figma for the first time, there was these templates here. These are all templates for a different part of Figma that I'll also talk about called FigJam, which I think is will also be very useful to people who are in the creative field. So recently Figma delineated between design files and FigJam, and FigJam is their tool for things like making diagrams and flow charts and even things like task managers. Here's a user persona map. There's tons of stuff there that if if you're making a flow chart, I would start there. There's kind of a lot of flowchart conventions, like when to use rectangles or diamonds and stuff, and a lot of the templates that Figma has can kind of teach those to you. But what's nice is they'll teach it to you, but then you can also just modify the file and use it for your own projects. Figma also has a lot of tutorials on their website, which are very beginner friendly. Basically, what I just showed you was the first section of like a 5-part making an app tutorial. And as you can see, it took you through like every single step. So the tutorials on the website are very good and very simple and pretty short as well. Another important thing to note is that Figma has a really nice creator base and creator ecosystem. There's active forums there's active forums where people will post files like templates that you can download. So chances are, if Figma doesn't have a template that's close to what you want, someone might have made one. There's a lot of YouTube tutorials. And then another thing is Figma has an ecosystem of plugins as well, which are kind of like little applets that will run in Figma that will do specific things. Those are usually more specialized, like if you're doing, if you're doing mobile app development and you want to make sure that something with like the gyroscope works or something, maybe Figma has some little a virtualization tool or something. Um, there's also a built-in tab in Figma that will take you straight to their forms. So I'm going to switch out of this presentation and go just to Figma just to see what it looks like. Here is, so this is actually the Fig Jam, which I'm not doing a lot of mobile UX or like website UX. I'm typically making like flowcharts. So this is where I start using Figma. So like I said, there's a lot of different like flowchart conventions that have developed over the years. For example, a diamond means a decision. All of these mean a specific thing. They're not hard rules. It's really what works for you, but this is just kind of the standard. And you can make all of these shapes in FigJam very easily. You can drag and drop or drag and draw these like arrows. They'll snap to the edges, so you don't really have to think about much. It's very simple and very quick. And even like, oh, I didn't want that to be a diamond. I actually wanted that to be a square. Very easy to modify and change. When you're working with collaborators, like I said earlier, it's very easy for someone to create or make a comment. I think I'm in editing mode, so I might need to be in comment mode. But here, yeah, like if you're reviewing someone else's file, you want to leave a comment right there. All I did was click on the little comment bubble. And you can also set up Figma so that when you leave a comment, the person gets an email or something so that they don't miss it. So that's a little bit of FigJam. I also have a real example here of a website I built, over the last couple of years. It's always in development, but a website I built for an online radio station. Basically, you can see here I've created different frames with different ideas of like different pages on the website. The website looks nothing like this anymore, but actually it would be interesting to show y'all so you can see if like how close it got. And actually it I think is that. You can see how close it is now and how helpful it actually was. So you can see it changed a little bit between here and here, but there was no reason for me to just start in the coding the website from scratch without having any idea what it looked like. It was so much easier to go in here, draw some shapes, physically move things around to see what worked and play with it a lot before I actually started to commit things to code. Oh, yes, that is me. And then you can see here, I was leaving a comment. I think I might have been working on this with one other person. And it's a really nice way to keep things organized. And as you can see, it's pretty close to what it was. I played with things a lot more, but you can see kind of the basic bones of the thing there. This will help you when, I don't know if anyone here is like a web developer or anything. I have experience web developing, but I'm very bad at it, especially starting from nothing. So I think when it comes to web development, if you aren't insanely talented. Like I'm not very good at web development, but the only way that I can get it done is to pre-visualize it first on something like Figma, um, and the actual, I mean, my experience with web development is that is really 90% of the hard creative work is to actually get it onto a page, just to see it. And so, if you are interested in doing like web UX or UI, this is like what I consider 90% of the hard creative work, is doing stuff like this. So again, if you're interested in this, this is definitely a way I recommend pre-visualizing things. And I think this one might actually have some functionality, like I hinted at before. When you set up your pre-visualization here, there's a button in the right that you'll notice that says, let's say, present, and that should present your website as if it were a functioning web page. So this is what you could send to collaborators and clients, in case you wanted to show them, oh, here's what the website would look like, without it just being screenshots of your file, you know? So like you can see here, there's a GIF that animates. That's pretty fun. You can see that I can actually, I guess this is the bottom of the page, but if I made it longer, you could actually like scroll through it. I don't know what else I can do here because I worked on this project a long time ago. I'm hitting the left and right keys, as if it was a slideshow, and that'll just get me from frame to frame. But like I mentioned earlier, you can also set up actual functionality. So if I wanted to click between these as if it were a real website, you could. And I think I'll do that now as just an exercise. Also a personal challenge to make sure I remember how to do that. Let's see. If you don't mind, I'm going to switch this so that it's only one screen so I can actually see what I'm doing. So let's say we want, we have these different frames and we want the this residence text here to take us to the residence page. That's what I'm calling this page. The title's up there, kind of tiny, but you can see it there. So I think you might have to create a component there, and it highlights it in purple. You can see it changed here in the layer view. And this, here's the, so yeah, components are also how you organize things as well. Like I put this footer here, like, websites have a footer where you have like different links to things. And I know I'm going to be reusing this footer on every page, and I want it to make it so that if I change one thing in this footer, like if I go in here and I want to change it so that Facebook, it's missing a font. Oh, okay, so I can't edit it because I have a font, so I'll just change the font. Quick sidebar. The Figma app will let you load in custom fonts, but I was probably using the desktop app on a different computer, and instead of importing the font, it just links it locally. So that's just something you have to look out for, but it will let you use and continue to see the font here, but it just won't let you edit it. So I'm just going to change the font so I can continue on. And let's say I want to change this to, say, MySpace. So now, if I use this component again, I guess I didn't have it anywhere else. But potentially then that component will update across anywhere that you use it. So you're not having to edit the same thing in 20 places. You only edit it in one place. And that is something that is consistent with good web design as well. So again, you're doing 90% of the work in this app rather than trying to design and code at the same time. But to move on, I was going to try to figure out how to make one of these link to something else. Oh yeah, here's the components tab where you can see the footer. You just drag it from there. So every time you make a component, it'll show up in this little box. So you're not meant to be copying and pasting components. You create the component and then you'll find it in here as if it's one of the tools that you use. Okay, I see. We're in the design tab here. Basically what I was doing, again, I'm kind of rusty on Figma. I was just looking for something that said prototype because that is the term that they use to, when they're talking about connecting things as if it were a functioning website. So I see a prototype tab here. And if I click on this, it gives me a little tip. Select a frame or object in a frame and use the circular node to drag a connection to another frame. So I can see that there's a circular node here. When I hover over it, it shows a little plus. So I'm going to drag this to this next frame. It'll give me another pop-up with some options. Does it want to be on click? Does it want to be on drag, hovering, mouse enter? I want it to be on click and I want it to navigate. Open overlay is like if you had like a pop-up window or something. I don't know if you saw that, but that was just me not knowing what to do at all, just looking around a little bit and finding the right thing. What's nice about Figma is you honestly don't even have to really know the app that well because the interface is so minimal and everything is useful that within 30 seconds I could find out where to draw this thing. So let's try to see if it works now. I'm in this base and I click the present. Oh, it took me to, it's reloading. So now potentially if I click on residence, and you can see it gives me a little hand thing, it will take me, yeah, this is where I drew the thing, the arrow. So really quickly you can start to set up like a mock website that you can give to someone, and instead of having a slideshow of screenshots, you can actually have someone come in here and start to navigate through this as if it were a website. And this isn't limited to doing web development either. You can see how this would be useful for making something like something a creative director might find themselves doing a lot, which is making a content Bible. I think this would be really interesting. When you're making a content Bible, which is basically a database, a user-friendly database for collaborators to stay on the same page when it comes to making creative decisions. What colors am I going to use? What fonts am I going to use? If you have characters, like who are the characters? Like anything you need to know when you're working on some large-scale creative project. I can see how this could be kind of fun and useful rather than just some collection of slides. I've used this for certain kinds of presentations as well. It depends on how much effort you want to go in for some presentation. How's it going? But hopefully you can see just from this little demo that this can be very powerful very quickly, and you don't have to particularly know anything about web development or coding or anything. So I just talked a lot. I just want to pause and give some time for any questions that came up in the past 30 minutes. I'm interested, if there's no questions at the moment, what are y'all studying? Are y'all in advertising or other places?
We're in advertising.
Advertising? Okay, so a lot of advertising.
High school.
High school, yeah.
Design.
Design, so you're in is it designing creative technologies?
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah. What are you studying in design?
we studied all three types of design. We studied like UI, UX.
Oh, cool.
3D and graphic.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. I would be surprised if you hadn't heard of Figma at this point in design, but there's a few other tools that people use besides Figma. There's Adobe XD. I think there's Sketch. Mira, yeah.
Envision.
I'm not a Mira fan.
No,
Have to be Mira. Envision, Sketch. Is Zeppelin, is that an Adobe thing?
Sketch is
Zeppelin is like for like prototyping as well. But personally, out of all the apps that I've used, I don't think anything is as easy to use but as powerful as Figma. Unfortunately, Figma just got bought by Adobe, so we might have to start paying for it at some point. But for now, it's free and awesome. So
you can also get an education license for free here
for Figma.
Yeah, for Figma.
Very cool.
With your UT email, the process is very fast, and you can get the pro version for a year for free.
Very cool. Yeah. I don't know what the license lets you do beyond the free.
It's just like having a professional account.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
You can save your stuff. You get more files.
Oh, more files.
Yeah, it's more like storage and flexibility.
Gotcha. Do you have a question?
If Figma does go like completely paid Adobe subscription, I recommend Framer because we came here because we were on the top Framer.
Framer. Okay, I hadn't even heard of that.
I think it's made by like another big company. It's like IBM or something like that.
Okay, I might do some research on it real quick. Some live research.
It's essentially the same thing. Yeah, it's very.
It's very similar. Yeah, like
very similar.
a lot of these kinds of UX prototyping apps are actually all pretty similar. I've mentioned that a few times in this presentation. They use a lot of the same conventions.
Industry standard is Figma.
Yeah, industry standards, definitely Figma. There's a lot of holdover of people using Adobe XD, which I would never recommend to use. It's an awful app.
I swear it's used in industry.
That's why we're here. We still learn Figma because we've never touched it.
Well, I mean, if you have used a similar app, I think you'll get into it super quickly. I'm sure you just opened it and saw. Yeah.
If you want to get your LinkedIn profile saying that you're certified to use Figma, there's like learning tutorials for free. That would literally take you less than an hour.
Yeah.
It's like 58 minutes of content or something like that. I like finished the project and it's like, oh, we have to finish this.
Yeah, like I said, Figma's website has a lot of tutorials. If you want to get something that looks official, there's tutorials online on LinkedIn that will give you like a little certificate. I don't know how.
I like to get the students all the way through UX because then you're starting to use it where you can walk through a particular app. So like we're doing green in the class and you can through. You're on the wireframes.
Wireframes, yeah.
Yeah. So start doing your UI in it as well and then test it all out before you get into development.
Yeah. It's just nice because Figma does both prototyping and the wireframing. So those are free if you have a UT email, which everyone does. You just have to make sure you sign up for it through LinkedIn. I guess I somehow skipped that when I went through it. But yeah, there's tons of resources out there, including just the Figma website itself. But it's been honed down to a point where you can pick up Figma in less than a day. Just one session and get the basics, and another session to get some advanced mechanics. I guess, I don't know if y'all have any other questions. That's all I had prepared for now. Anybody can use this time to just try to use Figma a little bit, see if you get stumped anywhere, and see if I can help you work through it. Me too. It doesn't go high. Let's see what else I had here. So this is actually a full template that Figma had that I clicked on that just said prototyping in Figma, and this is like a whole tutorial on how to actually do the prototyping I was hinting at earlier. You can see how all these arrows kind of point to each other in this spaghetti network, but it's very useful for visualizing how these things work. So this looks like it's some kind of like Instagram app type of thing, some kind of social media or something. Really simple. Another thing is like if you click on somewhere that hasn't been developed, it'll just kind of flash places you can click on. Pretty simple and straightforward. Yeah.